What's going on, guys, and welcome to another review of Bel-Air. This time we'll be talking about Bel-Air Episode 5, PA to LA. So we'll start by just a quick recap over what happened in this episode. So, taking off from the last episode, Hillary is planning a dinner, and she, of course, by the end of the episode, hosts this dinner for the influencers in the influencer house that she's getting ready to move into. Dinner goes well and she inevitably is accepted in fully. The influencers meet with the family and so on. And she also gets the support, I believe, from Aunt Viv that she was always looking for. That Aunt Viv notes that she has believed in Hillary this entire time, and she's pushed her because of that belief. Trey, who flies out to meet with Will, they get to reminisce and hang out. And then Trey and Carlton have a conversation about why Will really came out to Philly. And Carlton uses this information to leverage it against Will to keep him away from Lisa, threatening to tell, or at least putting on the guise that he would tell the real reason why Will came out to LA involving the gun and his confrontation with the emotional gangster. And then in the last segment of the show, we get the real nexus of what this episode is about. Will, stemming from the last episode, is really contemplating about staying in LA. And after Trey and Will go to the basketball game that Uncle Phil takes them to, Will knows that he plans to stay in LA. He finalizes his decision, but Trey isn't with it. He hates it. And then later on, after they get home, they get into a huge fight about this whole thing, with Trey feeling like he has nothing left to go back to. Meanwhile, Will, he's moving forward to get everything. That plus he's losing his friend, and he's left to deal with the struggle of Philly by himself. So rather than staying the entire week, he leaves, and they don't necessarily leave on the best of terms. Right after this, his mom, who was having conversations with Aunt Viv earlier on about Will staying, receives the word from Will that he has decided to stay there in LA. Vi is forced to come to terms with Will trying to step into the pathway of wearing the crown that she always told him was there for him to wear, should he take that responsibility on. And in this episode, Will finally does do that. As far as the story, the plot is, as I've discussed in other videos, the plot is the external happenings. The story is what's happening internally to the protagonist. In this episode, Will, what his transformation leads him to is the acceptance that the world is much bigger, or opportunities are afforded to him that go beyond the scope of Philly. And unfortunately, sometimes in life we reach a point where we do have to make an important decision, and this important decision may not bode well with others. And this can make the transition into the change that we're after especially hard when this transition isn't what makes our loved ones comfortable. Uncle Phil in the episode also had to make a similar decision, in that he decided to stand with Black people on his stance with defunding the police, the DNC, or whatever political party Uncle Phil was associated with at the time, threatened to remove him because his stance was just too strong. In this episode, we see a parallel between Will and Uncle Phil in that they both have to make a hard decision. And what I like about it is that both Will and Uncle Phil, despite the fact that it may not please other people, they decide to do what they believe is best for them. And this is a struggle for me in my life, in that I love to see the people who I care about happy. I love to see smiles on their faces. But I also know that I do have to take care of myself. And in taking care of myself, there's decisions that I have to ultimately make for me that may not bode well with everybody. My decision to move away from Christianity, that was a big one. I was afraid to let my mom know that that was the case for me. I was afraid to betray her beliefs that, one day I would come back to Jesus. I was afraid to do that. But I knew that ultimately my decision to move beyond that religious purview was for my best benefit. This wasn't the first, and this won't be the last time where I have to make a decision like this. And we all ultimately encounter these crossroads where we do have to make a decision. And sometimes the right decision is unsavory. But I believe that we all can make the right choice, even though it's difficult to abide within the consequences thereafter of making the right decision. I don't know what you might be dealing with in your life or what decisions that you have to make, but you can do the right thing. You can make the decision that is best for you. Because what is part and parcel to truly loving others is that it has to stem from a true depth of love that you already have for yourself. So how do you do that? You do that by understanding that there are some decisions that you have to make with strictly you in mind. Sometimes it is important for it to be you first. Not always, but there are some very important key moments in our lives where it's important for you to choose you first. Well, anyway, I did enjoy the episode. I think it was very impactful, especially looking back at Trey and Will's relationship from the original series and how impactful that episode was. It kind of ended in a similar fashion with Trey going back, feeling like Will betrayed him and sold out. But really what Trey was having difficulty with was facing the fact that he has to move forward in a new semblance of life without the Will idea that he had. So, given that I love the Trey When Trey Comes to Philly episode so much, and I think that this parallel in Bel-Air does a really good job, I give this episode an 8. I think they knocked it out of the park. I think there's just so many pieces within this episode that speak to me, and I look forward to seeing what happens next as far as moving forward with Will's decision to stay in LA. And all right, y'all. 1.